The 80th United Nations General Assembly was significant because it held at a period of global shifts in security, government, boundaries and beliefs. A tipping point, one may imagine, that as nations taken sides on national disputes and challenged the very theme of how united the United Nations are, which is our focus on Special Report.
This anniversary must not be a sentimental retreat into nostalgia. It must be a moment of truth. A pause to measure where we have stumbled and how we might have done better in turning our values into action that meets the demands of today. We are here to deliver a world of peace and development where the respect for human rights is paramount. We must recalibrate the delicate balance between our roles as sovereign governments and our duties as collective partners to renew multilateralism in a world that has evolved far beyond what it was in 1945.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war.
Getting things off their chest. This meeting of the United Nations seemed to have leaders speaking their minds and highlighting their country's positions on a range of issues,
including through access to education, healthcare.
But first, the welcome address.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 80 years ago, in a world scorched by war, leaders made a choice: cooperation over chaos, law over lawlessness, peace over conflict. And that choice gave birth to the United Nations, not as a dream for perfection, but as a practical strategy for the survival of humanity. Many of our founders had seen firsthand the hell of the death camps and the terror of war. They knew that true leadership meant creating a system to prevent a replay of those horrors, a firewall against the flames of conflict and World War III, a forum for sovereign states to pursue dialogue and cooperation, and the concrete affirmation of an essential human truth: we are all in this together. And this General Assembly Hall is the heartbeat of that truth. It is why for decades, world leaders have come to this one-of-a-kind podium. It is why you are here today. Because at its best, the United Nations is more than a meeting place. It's a moral compass, a force for peace and peacekeeping, a guardian of international law, a catalyst for sustainable development, a lifeline for people in crisis, a lighthouse for human rights, and the center that transforms your decisions, the decisions of member states, into action. 80 years on, we confront again the question our founders faced, only more urgent, more intertwined, more unforgiving. What kind of world do we choose to build together? Excellencies, we have our work cut out for us as our ability to carry out that work is being cut from us. We have entered in an age of reckless disruption and relentless human suffering. Look around. The principles of the United Nations that you have established are under siege. Listen, the pillars of peace and progress are buckling under the weight of impunity, inequality, and indifference. Sovereign nations invaded, hunger weaponized, truth silence, rising smoke from bombed-out cities, rising anger in fractured societies, rising seas swallowing coastlines. Each one a warning, each one a question. What kind of world will we choose? A world of raw power or a world of laws? A world that is a scramble for self-interest or a world where nations come together.
So, why exactly was the United Nations set up? Well, let's take a trip down memory lane.
Delegates to the United Nations Conference on International Organization.
It is not the purpose of this conference to draft a treaty of peace in the old sense of that term. This conference will devote its energies and its labors exclusively to the single problem of setting up the essential organization to keep the peace. You are to write the fundamental charter.
After the League of Nations and after World War II, it was deemed necessary to have a platform where countries come together to find common ground and especially avoid escalation of conflict into war. Established on the 24th of October, 1945.
It is now my duty, my honor and my privilege in the chair to call for a vote on the approval of the Charter of the United Nations, including the Statute of the International Court and also of the Agreement on Interim Arrangements. If I have your pleasure, may I invite the leaders of delegations who are in favor of the approval of the Charter and the Statute and the Agreement on Interim Arrangements to rise in their places and be good enough to remain standing while they're counted.
So, to prevent wars, uplift the human race, protect human rights. The Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas war, the conflicts in Syria and the Sudan civil war, and other hotspots and simmering tensions present some of the hardest challenges the United Nations has ever had to face since inception.
The pace of change across borders is a pause without pause. It manifests in the tools of technology, in the movements of information and finance, in the corrosive ideologies that preach violence and division, in the gathering storm of the climate emergency, and in the tide of irregular migration. We must own this process of change. When we speak of nuclear disarmament, the proliferation of small weapons, Security Council reform, fair access to trade and finance, and the conflicts and human suffering across the world, we must recognize the truth. These are stains on our collective humanity. We are here to strengthen the prospects for peace, development, and human rights. Madam President, I want to make 4 points today to outline how we can do this. 1, Nigeria must have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. This should take place. This should take place as part of a wider process of institutional reform. 2, we need urgent action to promote sovereign debt relief and access to trade and financing. 3, countries that host minerals must benefit from those minerals. And 4th, the digital divide must close. As our friend the Secretary General has said, AI must stand for Africa included. On my first point, the United Nations will recover its relevance only when it reflects the world as it is, not as it was. Nigeria's journey tells this story with clarity. When the UN was founded, we were a colony of 20 million people, absent from the tables where decisions about our fate were taken. Today, we are a sovereign nation of 236 million people, projected to be the third most populous country in the world, with one of the youngest and most dynamic populations on earth, a stabilizing force in regional security, and a consistent partner in global peacemaking. Our case for permanent seat at the Security Council is a demand for fairness, for representation, and for reform that restores credibility to the very institution upon which the hope of multilateralism rests. This is why Nigeria stands firmly behind the UN 80 initiative of the UN Secretary General and the resolution adopted by this Assembly on 18 July 2025. A bold step to reform the wider United Nations system for greater relevance, efficiency, and effectiveness in the face of unprecedented financial strain. We support the drive to rationalize structures and end the duplication of responsibilities and programs, so that this institution may speak with one voice and act with greater coherence.
The arrival of U.S. President Donald Trump, the malfunction of the escalator while him and U.S. First Lady Melania Trump were on it, and the teleprompter malfunction elicited reactions, and his criticism of other countries' national policies on immigration.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the #1 political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it, and I can call every single one of them out. You're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody is ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it.
The U.S. position runs counter to other presidents on many policies.
Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, in 1945, the end of the Second World War was greeted with celebrations, and hopes were placed in a new era of peace and cooperation, embodied by the creation of the United Nations. However, those hopes were soon overshadowed by the onset of the Cold War. When it ended in 1991, we once again dared to believe that this would pave the way to the vision of lasting peace, security, and cooperation as enshrined in the UN Charter. Sadly, that vision has not materialized. In fact, the situation has worsened, and here is why. Firstly, the Security Council, envisioned as the very pillar of collective security, is failing to meet the expectations of the world, if it ever has. The Permanent Five were supposed to be role models for the rest of the world working for peace. Some work in their own interests instead. Madam President, how are we to explain these trends to our electorates, to our people, and above all, to our children? Shall we tell them that this is the new normal, that might makes right? that the strong may seize what they want, because they can, that they can kill with impunity, because they can, that they may pollute, wage wars, and trample on international law, just because they can. Are we prepared to look our children in the eyes and say, "This is the world you will inherit, and there is nothing we can do about it"? With the adoption of the Pact for the Future last year, we have charted a path toward a stronger, more forward-looking United Nations. But we must now create the conditions to fulfill our commitments. One way forward is to establish a permanent advocacy network to give the Pact unconditional, sustained political support. To this end, I propose the creation of a global forum for the future, an inclusive movement of states committed to multilateralism, mutual respect, and the defense of our shared vision. For when it comes to human dignity, the constituency of like-minded individuals is vast, diverse, and knows no borders. Human dignity is indivisible. We must fight for it no matter how great the obstacles are. And there are many, we know that.
The United Nations is not perfect, and it needs to reform to reflect a very different world. I pay warm tribute to the role that Antonio Guterres has played as Secretary General during his term in office in that regard. The UN continues to represent the best of humanity. If it falters, it is not because it is no longer relevant, it is because we as leaders have let it down. Let this be remembered as a time when we reaffirmed our commitment to multilateralism, to the rule of law, to a reformed United Nations fit for purpose and for the future. As we did in the Charter, let us seek to save this and future generations from war. Let us reaffirm our faith in fundamental human rights, the dignity and worth of each human person. Let us work to establish conditions in which justice and respect for international law can be maintained. And as we pledged in the Charter, let us never cease to promote social progress and better standards of life for all in ever larger freedom.
But when it was the turn of the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to speak at the assembly, he was initially met with a walkout by many delegates who, opposing the Israeli position on the Gaza war, would rather leave the hall than hear him speak.
Please, order in the hall. Please, order in the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, much of the world no longer remembers October 7th. But we remember. Israel remembers October 7th. On that day, well, I'll tell you, you can remember October 7th too. You see this large pin here? It's a QR code. What I ask you to do is hold up your phones, zoom in, and you too will see why we fight and why we must win. It's all in here. On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here. They beheaded men. They raped women. They burnt babies alive. They burnt babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters. And these monsters took more than 250 people hostage. And those included Holocaust survivors, grandmothers and their grandchildren. Who takes hostage grandmothers and grandchildren? Hamas does. Ladies and gentlemen, if Hamas agrees to our demands, the war could end right now. Gaza would be demilitarized, Israel would retain overriding security control, and a peaceful civilian authority would be established by Gazans and others committed to peace with Israel. And of course, you understand that the war in Gaza has affected every Israeli. But I'm sure there are people in New York or in London or in Melbourne and elsewhere who are probably thinking, what does all of this have to do with me? And the answer is everything.
Dr. Tony Agboa-Sebaife, global affairs analyst, gives his opinion on the intrigues at the United Nations.
The UN, though an organization that is 80 years old now, is in a very difficult place. In fact, this UNGA that is taking place now, that started just about a week or so ago, has been bedeviled with a lot of divergent views, a lot of different approach from the different governments, and different nations that make up the 193 member states of this United Nations. So the organization is facing a deep crisis of confidence, crisis of funding, and a lot of global challenges that is to address, from climate crisis to gender rights, conflict, peace, and security all over the world.
The Vice President, Kashim Shettima, believes Nigeria is ready to take her place in the Committee of Nations.
Vice President Kashim Shettima, representing our President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at UNGA 80, was at his usual best element, his oratory prowess there. And he spoke a lot about security, and of which, certainly with the challenges that our country, Nigeria, have been facing with the issue of security, which the government have been trying to tackle headlong. So he spoke about that and then extended it, on the global frontier. And of course, that security, as far as nations are concerned, are things that they all have to work together with and collaborate, partner with each other to make sure that, all nations are secured. So that was a very good one for him. We also got speeches from the Ghanaian president, John Mahama, and of course, even the Namibia president. She also spoke eloquently, during the United Nations General Assembly, talking about Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwah. So another world leader spoke as well.
The President of the United States, Donald Trump, says nations need to work on themselves and give their people the right conditions to live in so as not to want to emigrate.
When it comes to the issue of immigration, the way I see it is that a lot of politicians in the Western world, they politicize it. It's a political issue. It's very good to get votes from the local people. We see that even playing out in the United Kingdom at the moment, where the Reform Party, they are, singing the tune of, anti-immigration and all that. It's very, very common during elections. So I think for Donald Trump, we all know he has his ways when it comes to this immigration issue, especially illegal immigration. And then for me, the message in this whole thing is, yes, a lot of these countries are becoming anti-immigration. What it means is that other nations have to work on themselves and make life, how will I put it now? Make life, meaningful for your people. I think that also will reduce the incidence of economic migration, because a lot of people who migrate, apart from crisis of maybe cases of war and conflict in some regions of the world, a lot of them are for economic purpose. So this is also a message, especially African leaders, to, look inwards and put in place policies and measures to make life meaningful for their own people. So that is also another way we can look at it from the flip side.
The very fabric of the United Nations is interwoven in its influence to solve international conflicts and bring its influence to bear on issues important to its members, which must not fail and must have ways to succeed to maintain its relevance in the world. For Special Report, I'm Olumide Macaulay. Thank you for watching.